good afternoon, my villagers. Today is the day that the Lord has made. Let me tell you, let us rejoice and be glad in it. But it is also a day that Satan is rearing his ugly head, trying to work against God's plan. And we mortals will declare, "Get thee behind me, Satan." We have some serious challenges ahead, but we know with God's help, we will triumph, as has been our history. We have always risen through the phoenix. Speaking of the devil, this technology sometimes can be real devilish. So I'm going to make an apology for last week's podcast for those of you who tuned in. Last show had some real technical issues, and I appreciate you sticking with us through it all. I thank you for your patience and your grace, because what we are doing here is not just content. It is part of a larger work of understanding, of restoration, and of reclaiming what has been disrupted. So when something's off, we don't ignore it. We appreciate and correct it. So we apologize to that end. Let me give thanks to my team here, though. Sheila Bird, my supporter, always there, and Juanita McClure, advisor, and of course my promo crew, the younger ones that kind of do the promo work for me, and to Norm. I tell you, this engineer here, he just keeps it real for us, keeps it up and everything, keep me going. And, of course, to my co-host who is on her way, a very deserving cruise, and we'll be away for a couple of segments. So I'll be here along with my guests, whomever. So you all just bear with us, but we wish her the best and have a great time, Rose, wherever you're going, okay? And, of course, I'm Ruby Williams Shivers, your unapologetic amateur, still looking for experts in Africanism. And I'm going to be calling it Uafia. Try to give it a little shorten it a little bit. That's Uafia, unapologetic amateur, looking for experts in Africanism. Remember, this podcast was established to bring truth, knowledge, and understanding of who we are, lest we perish for lack of knowledge. Now, that's straight from the scripture, Hosea 4:6. And to quote the great civil rights fighter, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., "Truth crushed to the earth will rise again." And another quote I like, I don't really know who to give credit to, but I like it. It states, "Change only comes when truth is spoken aloud." I believe that, because truth was spoken aloud at the United Nations this week by our Ghanaian president, the Honorable President of Ghana, John Mahama. He said, as I have been saying for the past 2.5 years on this podcast, that the transatlantic slave trade is the worst atrocity in the history of mankind. And I'll add another caveat, in the history of mankind and of any other kind. But it's celestial or otherwise, whether it's celestial or otherwise. Nothing comparable to it. There was a vote in the United Nations to make it official. It was overwhelmingly adopted, but who do you think rejected it? Our America. The Americans, the Israelis, and Argentina. There were 54 abstentions, and 123 overwhelmingly voted to pass it. See, that's what's necessary. You know, you have to call a spade, or a snowflake, and that's my quote. When we start putting our situation in proper context, it will liberate our minds. Now, let me just read this powerful piece from the United Nations. It says, "The UN General Assembly voted to declare the African slave trade as the gravest crime against humanity and advocate for reparations, while the United States, Argentina, and Israel voted against it. Voted against the resolution. led by John Dramani Mahama, President of the Republic of Ghana. The vote took place on the International Day of Remembrance of the victims of slavery and the transatlantic slave trade. The approval of the resolution will require United Nations member nations to discuss steps to eradicate systemic racism, ensure reparatory justice, and accelerate inclusive development with equal access to education, health, employment, housing, and safe environment. Now, that is powerful, right? When we can recognize it in no uncertain term that this is what happened to us, and it's not that it's ended. You know, we think of it as history. It's not just history, it's ongoing. Mutated through many over the centuries, and it's still affecting us as we talk today. You know, this is this resolution, though, it coincides with the documentary I'm preparing. So please keep your eyes open for it. I'm doing a documentary, and it's about just about that. Not just about that. It's about other things, but that is included. Will be one for the history book, I can assure you, and it's coming soon, so don't forget. And don't forget my newly released first children book, What's in a Name, you know? And that's on Amazon still, and through me directly. If you want to, have it autographed, just send it in to me, Ruby Shires, 158@gmail.com, and I will send you one autograph. Okay? Now, this is the end of Women History Month. Before I go any further, I just want to bring one great lady to our attention, give homage to her. It is actually the mother of one of the great activists here that we have going forward in our community now, Salam Ismail. This is his mother, and I know her from back in the day when she was a primary activist of our time, and I think is in Elizabeth, New Jersey. And I was just alerted to this, but I didn't realize there was a street named after her with her great efforts, where she raised her 11 children. I'm from a family of 11. She raised 11 children on that street, Monroe Avenue. I remember it greatly, but it is in her name now, and so we pay homage to a great lady, and she raised a great son. So I say, you rest in heaven, my child. Okay, and while my guest that I was expecting was unable to make it, I'm going to have to be the substitute, if you will. Now, I said that this podcast is all about information that we've been missing. Well, I was listening to a young lady, the grandchild of property owners that was taken in 1924. It gave me an idea for the new segment that I'm going to be presenting on this podcast. I had a similar experience, and I just imagine many other African Americans can contest to the same. I'm going to call the segment, quote, Let's Tell It, quote. But once we get started, I'm going to invite you, my villager, to submit what you might think more appropriate. How I came about it, actually, there was a family called the Deering family, Sidney and Irene Deering. They became the first black family to own a home in Piedmont, California in 1924. Now, that was before I was even born. After moving in, they faced racist terror, threats. A mob of 500 people surrounded their home, attempted bombing, and no protection from the officials. The city then used a false, quote, public project claim, a road that was never built, to take their property through condemnation. They were ultimately forced out and lost their home and generational wealth. Now, their granddaughter, Jordana Ackerman, I think it is, filed a lawsuit in 2026. She is suing the city for fraud, racial discrimination, loss of generational wealth, and is seeking compensation and acknowledgement of harm. See, there is that concept again. As I have been saying, for our treatment was not just a crime, but injury, and it's still being felt today. You know, look at the Clarence Thomases of the world, the Candace Owen. We are still least in health, wealth, and education. But in spite of it all, we rise like that sphinx and come out doing greater things than the enemy could ever dream of. You know? So it did not stop us, but it just held us back for a minute. So in concert with what my podcast is all about, to bring us information that will confirm our greatness, but will show the generational impact of our struggle. Slavery, enslavement, ma'afa is the term that we should use, distinguishes from just another slavery. It was not just history, as I said before, it's an ongoing occurrence that still lingers with us today. That's why this podcast is for our history, but also for the restoration of us back to our greatness. And I contend that the way to get that is through knowledge and corrective measures. So to that end, that's why I'm adding this new segment to my podcast to support and strengthen the idea. Now, it won't have any legal implication. Don't expect any legality around it. I'm just putting it out there for informational purposes. And I'm sure many of us have similar stories that have never been told. I tell mine quite often, but never in any public forum. Now I will. My great-grandparents, who were born in slavery, that's great-grandparents, acquired land that was passed on to my grandparents. The death of my grandparents left the property to my mom and her two sisters. But by theft and undermining, the property was stolen from them for a cow. He offered them a cow. So the segment is called, it's called that reason, let's tell it. So if your family lost land, property, and you want to share the story, just send the information in to me, rubyshivers158@gmail.com, and we will certainly be obliged to present it on one of the podcasts, because that's so necessary. We, all of us, can contest to having property stole from us. Yes. Gainey, as what I post, Miss Jones, email for an autograph book. Yes, definitely. You send it to Ruby Shivers, your request to rubyshivers158@gmail.com, and your address and whatever I need to send it back to you, and certainly I will send you an autograph copy. I will definitely do that. Thank you very much. Now, and to go further with what I'm doing here, I'm just alone today because I said my co-host is on that cruise, that tempting cruise. The weather was so pleasant out there today, and I just thought about her and said, wow, she's on it's a perfect day, I guess, to be on a cruise. But to the extent that we are going to carry on, and just wish her well. Hope that she will get a whole lot of rest that she deserves and need, as we all do. And we look forward to her coming back. I'm going to, right this minute, I want Norm to bring up my villagers. I just want to recognize them at the beginning, so we will be getting back to you in the end. Juanita McClure, assalamu alaikum. You look beautiful. Well, thank you, my sister. Robert Cabbage Talk on deck. Bring it on. Joy Jackson, California. Good afternoon, everyone. Keisha Gainey, Normandy Bradley. Will you post Ms. Shivers' email here? Okay, for the autograph book. Thank you, Keisha. I certainly will. My email is Ruby Williams, not Ruby Williams, Ruby Shivers 158 at gmail.com. Thank you. Sheila Bird, welcome, villagers. And we just so pleased, I can't say it enough, that when you come on and take in what we're trying to do, we're trying to give the message as it is going to be required for us to clear our minds on some issues. There are folks who are making comparison. I always like to quote the great ancestor now, Brother Joe Madison, said, what you going to do about it? We're in some deep stuff, and we're going to have to each one decide what we individually can do, because we all can't do the same thing, or shouldn't even try to do the same thing, given our situation. I talk about that. We are not, we like to say we're not monolithic. I don't like the word, because one of the reasons we need to be more monolithic, we have not had the opportunity, as most people, to get away and to, in concert with each other, come back with a consensus. Don't have to be monolithic, but come back with a consensus, and then we can start to think on our own. We do the thinking on our own before we get to any consensus, and that's not our fault. I talk about how we're going to need to see ourselves totally different from other people, because we've been treated differently. What happened to us over the first 200 years that they brought us over here, I call it human trafficking and a whole lot of other stuff, but that they brought us over here, they have made it their business deliberately to dehumanize us. And although they can't succeed at that, they certainly have made a difference in how we operate. Obviously, I use this as an example. I tell people, if you don't believe what you see, and many of us, I was listening to a report, radio yesterday, and this person was going away with why we don't do this and why we black folks don't stick together and what is this and what is that. My first concern with that, well, at least that's what I do. I like the quote from this great Einstein, who said, I'm not that smart, but I'm curious. Well, that's how I am. I may not be that smart. I'm just curious. So if I hear the whys, I want to know the why not. I want to know what happened. So if I'm to believe, and I definitely believe, that we were the greatest thing since ice, God created us first. We made, we built the pyramids. We created medicine. We created science, all of that. And if I'm to believe that, then I'm going to ask the question, then what happened to us over a 400-year period, and more specifically over the first 200 years? We're not only chattel slavery, we were treated like inhuman beings. Everything that you could think about was thrown against us. So if that did not affect, I don't know what else would. So even when I begin to look at us now in our station and say, well, why are we doing this, that, and the other, I'll go back to why not? What happened? That's why I'm determined to promote the idea that we need to compare. Sometimes it's clear to see things by comparison. I'm used the virus to compare our situation being over here in this part of the diaspora. I use the virus to say when that virus came in on us 2020, and I'm not saying everybody agree with the method that they suggest taking, that's beside the point. I'm saying the majority of people were flabbergasted. They knew they didn't know how to deal with it, didn't know what it was. It had killed over 2 million people in a short period of time. It had something that none of us had ever seen. As old as I am, I hadn't seen anything like that. And I know most of you younger ones hadn't. So we knew, though, without a doubt, we could not just go grab anybody to give us advice. We didn't try the rich people. We didn't try the celebrities. We didn't go grab, this, that, and the other. We knew we needed someone who we thought had some inkling about how to cure or to treat whatever it was we had. And that's who we went for. I even went to my primary doctor at one point to try to get some information from him, and he said to me very clearly, I'm not the expert. So when we think we are the experts on the things that I'm talking about, I want to be very clear. I'm very determined and intentional when I say experts in Africanism. That's a word I want us to coin and realize that that's a word I coined. I want us to realize that it means that is should be a discipline, just like oncology or just like cardiology, just like any other name applied to something that we have to deal with. Because in order to cure it, you got to name it. So if we say Africanism, that includes people who have studied sincerely and seriously the whole idea around. I use these three folks as an example. I say the faith-based person, because we are very faith-based people. We do believe there's a God somewhere. So the person who's faith-based but steeped in Africanism, steeped in learning who we are, how we got here, what we are, what God intended, all that. Then you need the historian, not just one who studied a little history, but deep, steep in African history from the beginning to now. And then, of course, the third person is the psychologist. You can't do anything without us finding out what happened to us, how it happened to us. And we have all those experts now. Don't get me wrong. We have the Dr. John Henry Clarks of the world. We have the Dr. Wilson. We have the psychologist, Dr. DeGraw, with post-traumatic slave syndrome, just to name a few. But see, I want to go a little further. That third element, I want us to find someone who will develop and suggest and teach us the cure for this stuff. Because if I go to my oncologist today, or if I go to my cardiologist today, the cardiologist is not going to send me to an oncologist. And an oncologist is not going to send me to a cardiologist. They didn't deal in that area of study. So for us to assume that just any one of us know Africanism, that just doesn't work from what we went through. So when we get those people together to create a discipline around that, other people will respect us then too, say, oh, they know there's an issue that they would have to deal with on that level. But just to throw it around like, nothing happened, or if it happened, that was back then, and it's not ongoing, and it has no bearings on now. No, that is not the case. And we got to really, as a people, understand that. But I don't expect Clarence Thomas to understand that. He has a Ph.D. from Harvard. I think that doesn't matter. That doesn't mean a thing. You can have as many letters behind your name as you want to as an African. You're just learning some European type of thinking. And that's another thing we got to do, too. One of the things I'm going to be doing with my documentary is trying to detail the certain areas of our lives that's so different from other folk that we probably need to even create a set of lexicon just for us. Because what hatred to one group outside of the African people, not the same as when the Africans hate being stepped on. The hate from the other group mean I want to step on you, and the hate from the African mean I want to be stepped. That's not hate, And like slavery, for instance, we use the word loosely. And I was reading on Facebook somewhere today, this young man called. He said, "Well, there was many people enslaved, or there was slavery forever." He's right about that. So if that is the case, then you have to look at what we went through over the 200 years and say, well, then that apparently need to be called something else, because it certainly wasn't what we know as slavery. First of all, we were chattel slavery. That meant that you was not ever going to be free. But outside of that, we were abused in ways that no human being that you read about was abused, all kinds of ways. So it was more than that. And I learned where this Dr. Ana, she's written a book, and I can't think of the name of it now, but she created the term, or she didn't create it, she picked up the term Ma'afa, M-A-A-F-A, meaning the worst of worst. So that's close enough, or closer than. So we need to refrain from using the word slavery, at least we get confused and confuse other people to think that we're in the same boat that they're in. It was Ma'afa. And I coined the phrase African slave virus 401 just to put it in context, that it was not just a crime they did to us, but a harm that inflicted upon us that is manifesting itself even as I speak. You know, we understand that, and once we understand that, we'll be clear about what we see when we're looking at each other in disdain. One of the reasons that I wrote my book, Verbal Healing, we must reject tired, trite, tasteless, and other nonsensical expressions that keep us damaged. And again, no fault of ours. We say what we feel, but what we feel is not always born out of any kind of study or any kind of treatment, for lack of a better term. But if you had the virus, as I had 1 or 2 times, I immediately knew I had to go get tended to. And it was not going calling any of these celebrities just because they had fame, fortune, or money. That's what we'll do now. We'll go get Kanye West, or we'll go get even President Obama. He's a great man. I love him dearly. But there were folks, the black men, who was a little bit offended in that brothers keepers thing. He meant no harm. He was trying to do what he thought was easy to do. But he kind of implied that black men were responsible for their condition, and if they raised themselves up, he didn't use the bootstrap, but the implication was that. They were a little bit offended, but they didn't realize he was coming from a place too. Same as all of us. We haven't been tended to in any way. Thought he was doing us saying the right thing, creating a program to get our people, elevated. But we got to realize, I tell everybody, I am an expert in living black. I live black every day. I know the racism, the this, the in, the out. I'm an expert. I'm not an expert in black living. Black living entails a whole nother set of knowledge. You got to know the why, the when, the where, and the how. So we got a whole lot of know the why, the when, and the where. But we got to come up with the how. We're going to take all that knowledge and do the same as they are doing in other disciplines. Like, again, I call them oncologists. They don't just go get a cardiologist to take care of what your situation is. They're special people, specialized people. And that's what we need. Until we see it as serious as that, we won't feel there's any one of us who's to blame for anything that we've really done. We're just not, And that's not to say we're going to accept anything that you do and use that as it's another thing that I start to use the word excuse, but I need to take that out of my vocabulary. Because there's 2 words that I talk about in my book, my newest book, Why Shouldn't I Cry, if you can pick it up, about how we use the word, or we don't like to use the word excuse. We'll say what we are saying about each other as an excuse. No, there's 2 words that I want you to take notice of. Excuse and explanation. Excuse is when you are born out of white privilege. White privilege is your background. Explanation is when black slavery is your background. Ma'afa. So that's a whole different set of understanding. See, when you use excuse, only because put it this way: how would you know it's an excuse if you have not treated me? Have you not tended to me? Have you not gone through what I went through to find out what that what effect that had, in what area, to what degree? Then you can't say it was an excuse or an explanation. So we're going to say explanation. But now, if you come out of white privilege, anything you see negative about you is an excuse, because you could go from the very bottom to be the president. We got an example of that right in the White House. So we don't have to even guess on that one. So let's be careful how we even use words applied for one group, but it's not part of our lived experience. We are so Europeanized. I don't have letters behind my name, and I don't have, I'm not a Rhodes Scholar. But I am a person who have innately been blessed with some knowledge that will allow me to look through our situation differently and say, we need something else. I may not know exactly what it is we need. That's why we need these psychologists, these faith-based people, these uh, historians. We need those three type of group of people to get together and come up with something that's going to set us all straight. I just, well, let me just put it this way. My second book I wrote, Victims of Confusion. It says it's a 15-step program to reserve the damage, the reverse, not to reserve, to reverse the damage of slavery. And again, I can say quite truthfully, I've been suggesting this for a long, long time, years as a matter of fact, because I'm convinced that's the most damaging outcome of protracted oppression is the emergence of a confused state of mind. That's the introduction to my book, Victims of Confusion. And I wrote this book. Let me see what it says here. I think it was, all right, let me see. I can't do it. Oh, it was some years ago. It was some years ago when I had this on my mind. I don't see the date here, but it was some years ago. Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. I am convinced that the most damaging outcome of protracted oppression is the emergence of a confused state of mind. As victims, we have accepted the definition of ourselves as one of imitator, particularly a participator, and perpetual or a participant of our oppression. I was given the mandate to deliver this message to the victims of confusion at a point where I was asking God some serious questions about the how and the why of the black man's sojourn in North America and elsewhere. What's the purpose of such a long and painful journey? See, confusion is our biggest problem. It becomes problematic when some of us become confused with rhetoric that declares justice and equality for all. From my early existence as a child of the segregated South, I was very aware of the Africans' position in the world of racism and white supremacy. I knew, for instance, that our position was relegated to being 3/5 human at worst, and not quite equal to the white man at best. While that was the official decree of the state, it was clearly not one that conscious thinking Africans had accepted. And I use that word cautiously, conscious thinking. When I say that, it's not to deny our greatness in any way, because if you look at our situation in total, and you see where we came from and what had been done to us, and for us to rise above the fray and to come out as I won't say as well as we came out in greatness. We come out in greatness because most of the inventions that I've been bringing to you, that's why I bring these clippings on, some that I hadn't known about, to let us know in spite of all that has been done to us, we still project the greatness of people who, just looking at us, we didn't know it ourselves. That's why we have to keep it in the top of our head, because some people will forget what we went through. Because we'll still come out with greatness. And I can't explain that. But I'm sure our experts in Africanism, would be able to explain that to us and give us some sense of how we can maintain and get beyond what we a lot of us are in now, and we're going to need that. Let me just bring in one of my clippings that we taught. Norm, I'm trying to see the word one with the inventions. I think it's 41. Bring Yeah, 41. Uh-huh.
GPS is a black woman. 3D imaging is a black woman. Laser eye surgery is a black woman. Escalators a black inventor. Elevators a black inventor. The roller coaster is Granville T. Woods. Roller coaster, the everything.
Internet, the cell phone.
The cell phone. I was just watching the thing on the cell phone. Our video games is Jerry Lawson in Silicon Valley. They try not to mention him, but he's the reason why we have Xbox, Atari. He did the first, before Atari, the F1 series. Jerry Lawson, a black dude who invented home videos, sanitary napkins. It's a woman. Our ADT, our security system, is a black woman in Queens, Mary Van Brighton. In 1966, she invented the home security. You're talking about open heart surgery, Daniel Hale. Plasma, Charles Drew. We can keep going. Surgical equipment, black people inventing, just constantly inventing, and they took everything and lied. But now things are coming into the light with all these black inventors. And black people are still thriving. Black women have the highest degrees in America. Highest degrees in America. These are the same women that were operated on with no anesthesia on their vaginas by that Dr. Mims guy who they just took down his statue in New York. These are black slave girls raped, but they're number one in academics. Black people invented hockey in 1895 in Nova Scotia, 22 years before the NHL. There's a book called Black Ice. You can see it. The atrocities that African Americans have been through, I'm surprised we are this peaceful. They used to make black people laugh in barrels in certain towns because they were too loud. So they go, you got to laugh in the barrel. Everybody around the world copies African Americans. GPS is a black woman.
See, that is good for the ears. It's not just to pump you up. It's for you the reality about who we really are and what we've gone through. The evidence is all evidence because of for us to come out on the other end doing those things that he just alerted us to shows you that in spite of, but that doesn't mean we were not harmed. Well, let me put it this way. All that we've done, maybe if he had not been harmed, we'd still been building pyramids. You know what I'm saying? So it's not that we'll still not have greatness in our souls, but it's just that they had taken so much from us, mainly the ability to think for many of us, to think on our own. You know, we're thinking through their lens. We're looking at things through their lens. And when we see each other sometimes, that kind of get things a little bit screwed up. We're seeing who we think should be someone else when we haven't taken into consideration all the things that we have gone through and still going through. Not that it's ended, see, but with us, it just never ends. And we just have to move and maneuver through stuff that any human being would just, really couldn't afford to do. Now I'm going to bring on another clipping. Let me see what it is, Norm. Let's go to 20 and see what she's talking about, white supremacy, because this is what it's all about, white supremacy. We can ever get beyond that, well, all of us would be in probably good shape. The whole human race.
I vote for a name change. We should stop calling it white supremacy and start calling it white narcissism. And I'm going to tell you why. I was reading a book called Fear of Black Consciousness by Lewis Gordon. And something clicked so hard, y'all, I had to put the book down. Because I just needed a minute to process. Because a lot of what we describe as supremacy doesn't actually look like confidence or dominance. It looks like insecurity. It looks like fragility. It looks like people losing their minds the second they're not centered. And that's not supremacy, that is narcissism. Yeah. So let me explain what I mean. Malignant narcissism is basically when entitlement, lack of empathy, and obsession with control mixed with aggression. It's not just, I think I'm great. It's, I deserve to be centered, obeyed, deferred to. And if I'm not, somebody has to pay. So now let's look at the real world, right? Why does somebody lose it when a Black person talks about racism? Why does teaching accurate history feel like a personal attack? Why does someone crash a conversation about police violence and make it about their feelings? Why does equality feel like oppression? That's not the behavior of someone who's secure in power. That's the behavior of someone whose identity only works if everyone else stays small. Lewis Gordon talks about how whiteness gets treated as the default for being human. So when Black people speak from our own experiences, it feels like a disruption, like we're making it about race, even though race was already baked in. Everything is about race, everything. And that's where the narcissism shows up. Because narcissistic systems don't just want dominance, they want validation. They want to be admired, obeyed, and never questioned. Look at the examples. A Black athlete kneels quietly, and it's a national meltdown. Black students ask for inclusion, and it's why are they dividing us? I say that ICE is actually modernized slave patrols. And I get white people in my comments who admittedly do not have Jewish ancestry saying, no, ICE is a Gestapo. Shut the f. That's not supremacy acting calm and assured. That's narcissism reacting to a loss of control. Malignant narcissism can't handle criticism. It can't handle boundaries. And it definitely can't handle being told you're not the center of this story. That's why the reaction is always rage, denial, or rewriting reality. And Lewis Gordon points out something really important. When people insist that their behavior is just human nature, what they're really doing is universalizing themselves. Everyone is like me. Everyone thinks like me. So if you don't, you're the problem. That is textbook narcissism. And once you see it in that way, it just makes so much more sense, right? Why equality feels like theft. Why accountability feels like persecution. Why diversity feels like erasure. Why Black consciousness is treated like danger instead of awareness. This system doesn't freak out because it's losing power. It freaks out because it's losing attention. So yeah, I'm voting to change the language because white supremacy sounds like strength. And what we're dealing with is actually a system that can't survive without admiration, dominance, and silence from everyone else. That's not supremacy, y'all. That is white narcissism. And once you name it that way, the behavior stops being confusing. It becomes predictable. I vote for a name change.
Mm-hmm. You see what she just said, and that's what I'm trying to promote also. This isn't the language. Well, ours, we have different meanings behind different things. It's our lived experience that project how we use different words, you know. That's a great idea. I never thought about it. White supremacy, you know, why put supremacy even near their name? Really, you know? And so there are other words that we got to look at. And in my documentary that I'm going to be putting out soon, I will go into that in more depth of how different words mean different things to us as Africans who've been disrupted over the 200 and 300 years. I also talk about how the elders concept. Some people are saying, well, the elders should go and just sit in a little chair and rock and whatever. I know this congressman that's running now again. I think it's in, I'm not sure, one of the southern states. But anyway, people are suggesting, I think he's 82, and suggesting he sit down. We got to start looking at our elders from a different viewpoint than from just what we used to. If we sat down, there would be a disruption like nothing. See, we're the ones who the conduit of the knowledge that had come before the younger folks that wouldn't even know about. So there are things that need to be a continuum of us not separating ourselves, but connecting in ways that could move them forward without severing the elders. We just can't afford it as African people. We don't have, most people move in an organic way, going about their business, transferring things from one generation to the other. Ours is not organic because ours is so severed in the process. So what we know as elders or have experienced as elders need to be known by younger folk. They need to be there to catch on, pull, and never, divide. But I'm talking about all that in my documentary also. So it's going to be a real good read, and I hope that you look forward to it. And when I release it, certainly will let you know. And it's going to be just another part of sharing information, because I think I take seriously the scriptures that said, "My people will perish for lack of knowledge." Now, it wasn't just put there for no reason. And the knowledge we get, we may say, well, we get knowledge. No, it contorted, and it's not the knowledge that we know represent truth. We got a lot of, knowledge, but it's not representing of truth. What I want to do now, Norma, bring my folks on. I want my people to inject now too. I want you to express some things that you may be feeling about what we're saying, and I'm gonna read them off for your information. Okay. Let me just see if anybody has any comment. Just give me something, what you think about what we are saying today, if you have an opinion about it. Let me see. I see the same people, Juanita. We see Eskia, I'm watching. Sheila Bird watching. If you all have anything to say, don't be afraid to just put it out there. Put it down there. Beautiful sis. Assalamu alaikum. Robert said on deck. Sheila, welcome villager. Eskia, I'm watching. Juanita, assalamu alaikum. Okay, well, we'll bring another clipping on. And if you all have anything to say, just put it on there and I'll just read it off. Let's see what we got now. Wait a minute. I want number 48. Only because you all recall, I bring these different segments on for a reason. You remember I asked my white sisters at some point, I said about 3 or 4 months ago, what's wrong with your men? And that was done deliberately, intentionally, because what happens is we use the phrase a lot of time, I'm just as good as you are. That implies that you think that person is good. And we don't even think about it that way. When you say I'm just as good as you are, you mean you go, but that is not the case with these group of people. These group of people are unlike any other groups of men in any group. We got there are folks in every group that need some attention. Something happened. But that's not the majority. It's the minority of your men in any group that have their issues. But the majority of people in the white group, and I use that, we know that word, socially constructed. Let me see which one I said. Number 46, I think. Number 46. But what happened is it seemed like the majority of their group, their men in their group, have issues beyond anything that I can even define. It's going to take a whole lot of psychology to understand that. But there's like that. Ours is not. Other groups are not. I don't know any other group that can compare to that. So when we bring on these clippings,
Let me make something clear right now. At this point, the only reason anyone would support this administration is because they are either willfully ignorant, hateful, or just a flat-out racist. There is no other explanation. You do not get to hide behind fiscal policy or I just like strong leadership or I'm tired of the left. No. You're not neutral. You are just comfortable with hatred and cruelty because this administration is showing you who they are every single day. And if you can't see it by now, it's because you are choosing not to. They've ripped families apart. They've gutted disaster relief. They've handed excessive power to ICE. They've passed sweeping authoritarian laws and straight up said they hate half the country. They're not even pretending anymore. So if you are still standing with them, then be honest. You are not standing for freedom. You are standing for fascism. And if that bothers you, good, because it should. The mask is off, and whatever you think you are defending, you are not. You are defending billionaires who are robbing you. You are defending politicians who would throw you under the bus in a heartbeat. And you are defending a regime that is actively trying to crush the people you claim to stand beside. So stop pretending. If you still support this administration in 2025, you've either decided to stay blind and ignorant, or you are just on the side of hate. That's it. Those are the only two options. Stand in solidarity and transcend what divides us, my friends. Please share this video. Thank you. Let me make something clear right now.
Excellent. And the fact that some of us are so busy trying to convince ourselves and other folks that we don't have these strong feelings against people who do things to us. is ill-advised. I wrote a book some years back called Emotions to Live With. Very apropos for today because some of us are feeling very strongly about things, and we think that just to feel strongly is hate or is something that's alien to us. And you hear many times people, I don't hate. No, no, no. Everybody in the world have feelings. Now, it's what you do with them. But if my God hates sin, means he hates sin. If my God is a jealous God, I was I I was confused by that years back when I was a kid. Back in the day, I'm an old Southern girl, came from a place where you would go to church every Sunday and maybe 2 or 3 times during the week, but you stayed all day. But you always have folks out there, sort of the village concept, always prepared to help the young people get through whatever. And we had this minister that we loved because he would always try to keep us real, keep the children intact, try to keep us, under control. He would always use the word when he throw us maybe into a little something with each other. He would say, don't hate, you can't hate, and God don't like, and you can't be jealous. Or we use those words. And as a youngster, it would confuse me only because I had to sit under his tutelage. I had to sit when he was preaching. And when he began to preach, he would say, clearly, God hates sin. God is a jealous God. And it would totally confuse me. I said, well, if God hates sin, it means that he has these emotions. So it stuck with me all through my, coming up. I wrote this book. When did I write this book? I don't think there was time in it either. But anyway, it's called Emotions to Live With. But out of that sentiment, out of the idea that, well, it was 2010. I wrote this book 2010. Emotions to Live With. And I'm just going to read a portion to you. Because for those of you who think it might, and the subtitle will Let Go, Let God. Emotions to live with, meaning that you got those emotions. You do have all these emotions. But if they get to the point that you can't control them, beyond your control, and you're going to do something silly, then let go, let God. That's the advice I give you. And I say, just to read my forward here, when I reached out to some friends who shared their insights on the theme of my book, because there were 2 other young ladies who wrote the book with me, Emotion to Live With, I was confident I would get some interesting perspective. I hope you will be equally enlightened. Say the participating writers share their concept of the 4 emotions. Think about it. Hate, envy, jealousy, and vengeance. And the social and spiritual relevancy of critiquing long-established beliefs vis-a-vis these 4 emotions. Each brings a unique point of view shaped by the prevailing theme of the book. As a bona fide Trinity-believing Christian, I'm working from the model of the syllogism. God possesses all emotion. God's emotions are valid. Therefore, all emotions are valid. I ask my fellow writers to narrate their life experiences regarding these 4 emotions in the context of their own religion and cultural upbringing. Because one of the young ladies was a Muslim and the other one was, I forgot now. But anyway, survey participants were provided questions designed to define and elicit their specific understanding of the emotions. I truly applaud those who participated in our survey, on and on and on. But we did have those who came aboard and tried to put some insight on what their experience with emotion, emotions to live with. Now I say here, written for the curious at heart, for those who have questions but have not yet been satisfied by the answers received thus far. The desire to create dialogue between people who are sincerely interested in new understanding of old ideas is implicit in the writings of all the contributors to this project. The aim to enlighten oneself and others on the contradictions that are most troubling to this group of writers is illustrated by examples, anecdotes, and quotation from others' understanding of emotion and their consequences. Specifically, the four emotions of hate, envy, jealousy, and vengeance, often considered root causes of numerous personal and universal dilemma. Central to any dialogue on the subject is the connection with the total body of emotion. In understanding this holistic connection, hopefully we will provide, or at least inspire, a new understanding of all ideas and a redefining of certain stigmas. These talented and curious writers discuss the dictums and dichotomies based on personal experiences, complemented by the viewpoint of those who were interviewed on this journey. And we had a few people in this book. If you got this book, Emotion to Live With, you know we solicit some people in the back here that gave their opinions. It's a very interesting book, so if you ever get a chance to pick it up, you won't be disappointed. Got survey responses, and there are several people who responded in their way that what they thought emotions meant and why they felt certain ways about certain emotion. Most of them, like me, was confused initially because just assuming that what we hear all the time, well, don't hate and you don't, envy and you don't be jealous, just assume that to say you weren't could clarify or justify whatever feelings you have. But it doesn't, because you got those feelings. If God had the feelings, you hate the sin, jealous God, whatever, then you have to understand. Goes back to what I say about us as African people. If you look at us in our condition now and you have questions, like Einstein, I'm not so smart, I'm just curious. All you need to be is curious. You ain't got to be so smart. Just be curious. I wonder why. If they say we build the pyramids, if they say we, created this or we invented this and we know that we did, then what happened in the process of a 400 years involvement with people who, abused us in the way that they did and still doing it, which will bring us to what the United Nations, what the Canadian president has brought forth. We need to seriously, not that we haven't done it before because our folks have thrown out the idea of reparation, but somehow it get lost in the sauce. But that still be the first thing we think about. Had we been forceful about it, and it's still not a blame game because we would have if we could have, we would not need affirmative action, DEI, or whatever else that they claim that they are giving us. We deserve everything because we were not the beneficiary of these things anyway. The white woman was the beneficiary, but she had been abused too at some point. So she got what she deserved and more. We didn't get even what we deserved. So we were not the beneficiaries of affirmative action. Nor were we the beneficiary of DEI. But for the sake of clarity, I'm going to say, I see that is how my time is up. I've enjoyed you all, and I hope that you have had some better understanding or just an understanding of what my podcast is all about and what we intend to do here. We intend to apply information that we think truthful. We know truthful information because we don't bring anything other than that. I don't just to bring opinion. It's not about opinion. I bring facts. I bring you facts. And we can deal with that as we wish because it's going to only help us. I see that my time is winding down. I've had a great time here. I appreciate your coming and being attentive, and I appreciate you always. I'm going to say we're going to take this to another level. We're going to see you next week, and we're going to bring you additional information.